watching the Forest Fair Mall for years, and soon it'll be demolished. But there is one business that remains, one that people are still seeking out inside what was once the second largest mall in Ohio. Brett Underwood shares what's next for Arcade Legacy.
If there were an award for the strangest meetup spot for a tournament in all of fighting game history, it has to be Meet Me at the Blue Gazebo with the giant orange flying pigs. My original goal for this video was a detailed personal journey down to the Cincinnati Mills Mall, but after sitting on the idea for a while, appreciating how peculiar it is that this abandoned mall became the hub for thousands of fighting game players has struck me as much more interesting. This mall already sits in infamy, but the draw it had for people all over the Midwest is utterly strange. There have been weekly and monthly tournaments here for over a decade, including Melee, Brawl, Project M, Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, and many, many more. One of the weirdest tournaments I'd like to focus on was one in the dead of winter, including some familiar faces you might recognize if you're up to date in the competitive Melee community. The reason this mall is still standing is because the funding to tear it down took until about this year to get approved. I only recently learned this, and since I've wanted to make a video about this place for quite a while, I figured I should quickly get everything together to go down and get some of my own footage before it was torn down. However, if you've been to this mall, you will know they are incredibly strict about making videos. This was another issue I ran into that made me want to shift my focus to the history of this event, and the leftover results from a tournament I will dub the Icebox Tournament. I still managed to capture some cool footage from what will be one of the last time any competitive gamer will step into this venue, so I will do my best to paint a picture of every detail that I can't quite capture with my camera. I mostly want to spend time reminiscing on the Icebox Tournament, because it was so strange. And so many people who are still active in the Melee community went to this. It's actually kind of crazy. Just look at this bracket and tell me you haven't heard of half of these players. Right here I try to give some commentary on the mall's outside appearance, an entryway that used to lead you to some now sealed off movie theaters, but I managed to lose the audio. Either way, I wanted to include this footage because it allows for a sense of scale. When you arrive at this mall for the first time, it is daunting. You think to yourself, there is no way this is the right place. Is this the right place? This door's locked, but you can still see, I see like a broken light fixture in there actually. You will not be able to see it from me, but I was hoping I can get in. Look at all that, just falling apart in there. Now, I don't think I actually came in on this side ever, so kind of makes sense. Look, the whole thing just fell. Looks like there's a chair in there or something. After wandering in past the children's bounty house titled Be Adventurous, through some old school Nickelodeon orange overhangs with plastic Pepsi bottles lobbed onto the top, you'll reach an area that echoes the Dreamland music way down the hallways, ensuring you're in the right place. I want you in this little seat right here, just imagine like you're in the car with me. We're having a conversation. These flying pigs in this gazebo, so strange. And the mall has a lot of fake plants too. It's strange how good of a condition it was always in when there were tournaments in there. And there's these fish that are hanging, and it almost looks like a little restaurant Subway type theme, like you're going onto the train type Subway, you know? For some history on the mall, it began construction in 1986 and went way over budget. a building amassing over 1.5 million square feet. The architecture inside is very strange but unique, like a giant children's playroom. Much of it reminds me of the backgrounds and the bonus stages from Sonic, except they're in real life and they are twice my size, sometimes 5 times my size. The construction costs ended up being over $250 million, and this was in 1986. L.J. Hooker, the man behind this project, was facing around $1.7 billion in debt, so he turned to bankruptcy. Everyone else involved after that point has also turned to bankruptcy. The mall project was then handed over to L.J. Hooker's lenders, and by that point, people shopping at this mall or trying to rent out the space had already dropped by 56% because nobody had any idea what the future held for it. Throughout its lifespan, more and more money has been put into it to renovate, redesign, and hopefully spark interest in this mall, but nothing was working. There were talks in 2007 of an IKEA being built in the mall and the city hopefully finding some use for this big empty building, but the deal fell through. The place is nothing more than a time capsule full of broken deals. In February 2022, Hillwood Construction Services began negotiations to purchase the site with the goal of tearing down the 1.9 million square foot shopping center and redeveloping the site with 1.5 million square feet of light industrial buildings at the cost of $150 million. As I walked through this mall, of the few services still operating in it is an arcade that has hosted just about every tournament here, known as Arcade Legacy. It's a pay-to-play store where you can borrow controllers and play whatever arcade machines or game on the projector they have out at the moment. This tournament series was called Cincinnati Smash Classic, which is still run under the same name today, albeit in a different location. When I arrived to the mall and made my way to the shop, I heard familiar clacking and voices echoing through the halls. I thought that maybe the TO of Big House Past was causing me to hallucinate the olden days. Melee is just so imprinted on me and my being that maybe I was hearing things. It actually kind of looks like there's a bunch of people playing Smash or something, just like I remember. There's actually all these skylights over here that I really want to get a look at. But I have found it, the famous flying pigs in the gazebo. They are huge, absolutely massive. And all the fake plants that are still here, and all the disabled water fountains. But it just so happened that the day I decided to go record some footage, there was actually a fighting game tournament going on. I noticed people playing Marvel, but after talking to one of the organizers for a while, there was a total of 7 different games being played. Apparently there was one more tournament scheduled at the mall, but after that, Arcade Legacy would be moving to a new location, and all future tournaments would be held elsewhere. So there I was, graced with one of the final tournaments to ever be played in this ghost town. There are plenty of other YouTube videos that have showcased this mall's interior, but has anyone stopped to tell you about the fake plants all throughout the open space where the tournament gets held? This empty drained fountain is surrounded by fake plants. They are caked with dust and have an indescribable synthetic fiber in them, unlike most rubbery, squishy fake plants you might have at a grandma's house. Most of the floor is carpeted, but on the main floor, there is swelling likely due to water damage, and the ceiling is in such disrepair that there are empty cat litter boxes set everywhere there could be a leak from the rain. It might seem very alien to a lot of slippy kids, but in the 2010s, Melee tournaments in the Midwest weren't really a thing. The only majors we had were Big House and Full Bloom, which would always instantly cap. And those were where top talent would fly out and compete against one another. Northeast Ohio was lucky enough to have a tournament series called Shape of Melee for a while, and that's where people could witness Mango fight against Armada in the finals. Other than these few cases, this part of the Midwest was isolated. But because of the lack of tournaments, there were several different regionals that were often held in college venues, local pizza shops, half-empty malls, and other strange places. We had to take our opportunities where they were given to us.
Player, can.
But I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
It doesn't matter where this is in bracket.
This is
There's a Donkey Kong on
top
the screen.
64. The Icebox Tournament was ran in a round-robin pool-style event, and I'm sure many people have forgotten the days where that was the norm for giant tournaments. It had 126 entrants, too, so imagine everyone driving in their warm cars, all cozy, from many hours away to this mall, and each carpool walking in, slowly coming to the horrifying realization that the venue will not be warmer than 34 degrees.
We are cold. We are cold.
We are so cold. Oh my god.
It's the coldest venue I've ever been in.
Feels bad. I had to play my bubble match literally with Frozen.
Oh my god.
No Johns though, because everyone's playing with Frozen.
Everybody's playing Frozen.
Yeah, it's just there's a huge
Except for
asterisk on
Cobb.
this tournament.
This tournament was the 7th installment, and none of them were quite like this one. It also ran UCF. It was one of the first larger tournaments I went to that ran UCF. I'm sure this not only ages me, but gives you a proper time frame for how different the scene was back then. But back then, I didn't even like UCF. Within the round-robin pools, the top 4 made it out of every pool into a top 64. The top 8 of the tournament consisted of Wenz, and at the time up-and-coming Kentucky Fox player, Zamu, the 16-year-old Fox from Champaign, Illinois, Reeve, Indiana's pride and joy, Boyd, the ice climbers from Neo, Fizzle, Columbus, Ohio's jack-of-all-trades, Cobb, Kentucky's best peach player, Essie, Cincinnati's prodigy Fox and Chic main, and one person to rule them all, Dreffin. Wenz had an impressive run to 7th place, beating Bug Thief and Sweetie T in winners, then losing a 2-1 set to Sir Maris.
He's got a little bit impatient, try to end the game right there. Sir Maris on the punish now. Oh, big F-tilt. Regrab.
A little bit more percent could get an F there.
Exactly. Oh, that's a big wait. He could have waited out for that shield to come down. That nair was
Nice.
brilliant. Sir Maris clutching out the game.
Whew. He then went on a tear, defeating Snap, the second best player in Cincinnati, Varkid, Imdur, and finally losing to Essie. Zamu would end up having a strong winners bracket performance, defeating Drew, Fizzle, and Thexy before falling down to losers because of Dreffin. After a close 2-0 against the underdog Tutran, he had a rematch against Fizzle. He ended up being beaten 3-0. Reeve ended up sweeping through winners all the way to the semifinals, only dropping games to Foxcap and Sir Maris, until Dreffin beat him in a convincing 3-1. After losing, he was upset by Essie in a commanding Game 5. Boyd also ended up making it all the way through to winners semis, beating his bracket demon Wolven Samus, Snap's Peach, Free Palestine, and Essie before being 3-0'd by Cobb's Peach. In losers, there was another story happening. Fizzle started off in losers round 2 after taking the unexpected loss from Zamu, and was now on a 6-set win streak. Boyd would be the 7th in his 3-1 victory. Cobb made it to winners finals without breaking a sweat. Without dropping a single game and being on the fortunate side of the upsets being made in the bracket, he held his own until losing to Dreffin 3-0. Once there, Essie also managed to 3-0 him, the Ohio duo now meeting in grand finals. At the time, Essie was known to be an astounding melee competitor. This tournament showed the prowess she really had, beating Tarchwood, Fruitfly, Dempt, Zetz, Wenz, Reeve, Fizzle, Cobb, and taking a set off of Dreffin in grands.
No, it looks like we're gonna have a true stock of champions for Game 5
Game
in the first
5,
set
last stock.
of Grand Finals. Can you defend Cincinnati here? Or is Dreffin taking it home?
That's a really meaty combo.
Oh, there it is. It's a butt grab from Sheik. Is that a thing?
I don't think so. It's a peach thing. I don't know if it was a
Playing a little timid.
Yes!
Okay, we're going to set 2.
I called it.
Even with the upset against Boyd, there was no doubt in how strong Essie truly was after that losers run. If there's one strength Dreffin had during this time period in Melee, it was gatekeeping the good players from being called the best players. If you ever found yourself in a set 2 of Grand Finals against him at a regional, you know what true terror is. In this exact position, he's beaten Zane, Magi, Shroomed, and countless other top players. This tournament was just another on the list showing his adversity as a top Melee competitor.
Okay, there's something going on over here. I'm not sure what it is. video game. This is really nice, so.
This video was taken in June 2013. An average guy walking through the mall and coming across a fighting game tournament. In the grand scheme of things, maybe the Cincinnati Mall was the perfect place for nostalgic people to get exposed to the overall fighting game community and gain interest in the driven competitive scene. The Icebox Tournament is just one rendition of Cincinnati Smash Classic. Most of the tournaments where locals ran on pen and paper, not even using more primitive websites like Challenge most of the time. Much of the memory within this mall will fade with it and the generation that was able to bear witness its prime. With my own limited perspective, from only one tournament and my one final drive home, this will be a story I share for years to come.